8:34, morning to you, Stephen and Ellie, with you today on your TV, radio and online. And honestly, I can't tell you how many emails and things we've had.
We're inundated.
Absolutely inundated. Loads of people getting in touch. Billy Stoke-on-Trent says, I'd like Boris back. I voted for him in 2019. I'd do it again. Michael says, if Boris wins, I would vote for him in the next election. If he does not win, I won't bother to vote again.
Carol says, I joined the Tory party to put Boris in power. He's the only MP that should be PM. He's the only one I would vote for, and I'm far from alone. Millions feel the same way.
Simon, though, Stansted says, we must realise we are part of a game. Boris pulled out of the race with May, surprisingly, but then she resigned and he got in. Bernie says Boris is not a viable option as he wouldn't get a majority in the House. Philip says the only politician from the two main parties that's reflected the majority of the country's feelings on immigration and law and order was Suella Braverman. But of course, she went because she broke some rules, but security rules. I mean, doesn't that raise a big question? Plus, of course, she didn't really need to resign on that. She could have issued an apology. Right. So she made a point of resigning, doesn't she?
But she may be in a cabinet now. She's the darling of the right of the party, isn't she? And if they're looking for that unity cabinet, maybe she needs to be there. Do let us know what you think. Yeah. And one last one, should we do? Angela in the East Midlands says, I'm a lifelong Conservative voter, she says, but never again. They're a complete and utter disgrace, and I can't even class the party as Conservative anymore. Angela, do you want one more there?
I was just going to say Richard in Cumbria. Morning, Richard. Says, I think the Labour politician, well, he wasn't a politician, an advisor, yeah. John McTiernan, who we had earlier, got it spot on. The Owen Paterson affair was the very start of the Boris demise. He might have just still been the leader if it wasn't for that. Keep your thoughts coming through, GBViews at GBNEWS.UK. We'll get the views now, not of you, but of our two esteemed guests, Liz Kershaw and David Mellor. Good morning, you two. Liz, let's look at the times, should we? What is the world making of where we are?
World watches on with horror, anger, mirth and schadenfreude.
Contempt. Schadenfreude.
Yeah, so let's go with Germany.
Who's he? Plays centre forward.
Mönchengladbach.
Dortmund, yes.
Yeah, Germany first then. The press, the news that Liz Truss had gone.
Yeah.
Because it is important how the world sees us, obviously.
Oh,
because
yeah.
a lot of it is about image and confidence. So in Germany, the press initially reacted with the air of zoo visitors watching a hungry polar bear on the loose, torn between concern, horrified fascination and relief at being on the safe side of the barrier. The chaos in Britain has reached perfection, proclaimed the Frankfurter Rundschau newspaper. Right, well that's them. France, speaking before an EU summit in Brussels, Macron said, I hope that Great Britain can return to stability as quickly as possible. It's good for us, it's good for Europe. Anyway, another commentator, Marion von Rentenbergen, said, the UK has gone completely mad and is an incredible mess. And Macron also said Boris Johnson alone has popular legitimacy. Sorry, it wasn't him, it was Alexandra De Vecchio. Right, the United States, President Biden says he'll continue to work with us together to meet the global challenges our nation faces. China was wary of Liz Truss's hardline approach during her campaign and in her election, and said she was hyping the China threat. Irresponsible.
China doesn't like a hardline approach.
And I wonder if China at all interfered in things, you know, with bots, etc.
Interesting. Ukraine's tweeted, haven't you? You found that this morning. So the official Ukrainian Twitter account tweeted.
Put a picture of Boris Johnson up saying he's the man. But we know that, don't we? We know that he's very popular in Ukraine. That shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. Yes, it's Ukraine government organisation Better Call Boris. They've tweeted this morning.
Well, just finally, Italy has had nearly 70 governments since the Second World War. And they were very angry that it was said by commentators that Britain was becoming like Italy. They're saying that Italy's, you know, far more successful at the moment.
There is a very funny little clip doing the rounds on Twitter, actually, if you can be bothered to look for it, which is a German news reporter reporting on all this stuff in German, But she then decides.
then
decides to read a tweet from one of the MPs who's we couldn't possibly play it because it's full of expletives, and she just sort of reads it out in English. Absolutely.
It's
you couldn't do that on British television, let me tell you.
It's a bit like the fast show, the Scotchio, gutus, but so she's just, as you say, rattling it off in German, and then she comes out with the most foul expletives.
It's extraordinary.
Everybody's been swearing this week, though, haven't they? Very quickly. Yeah. I mean, Jeremy Hunt's name has been missaid many times, and people have used the F word. And Savage Javid was described as, you know, SH1C. Everybody's been really potty-mouthed, but not us here.
Not us, we don't agree with that. No.
But the satisfaction I think this is giving, we cannot deplore the satisfaction this is giving our friends overseas, which reminds me of so many, why not be all that keen on the Chinese, but always have wonderful proverbs for all these things. And one of them is, there's no sight so satisfactory as watching a friend fall off the top of a high building.
Oh, that's very nice, isn't it?
It's a bit tough.
No, but I mean, that's what they're doing here.
Yeah.
And, you know, and although, you know, look, I'm embarrassed and not a little bit ashamed of the way things are in this country, but I'd much rather live in Britain than in Germany, where they can't even elect a government that has the consistency of purpose to be able to support, for instance, the Ukraine, and where, you know, Germany, having had its adventurous time in foreign policy and doing terrible things, they've now gone entirely the other way and have no real convictions whatsoever and no ability to be useful at a time of desperate worry for Europe. And the Germans can laugh all they like, but we are still a better place.
Well, speaking of Germany, I mean, the French and the Germans are falling out currently. Lots of arguing in Europe over how to deal with gas prices. And Germans trying to go their own way, and Macron saying, no, we must have a EU-wide policy. Well, let's see how that works.
I think it is significant how this is going to go reputationally for us. I mean, I was listening to a Greek politician this morning who was saying he'd always admired the UK for our stable economy and our stable politicians, and they feel in Greece as though their economy could crash any moment, and they'd always admired us for that. And then look what happened just a few weeks ago.
And the fact we're having to pay higher rates for our borrowing than they are in Greece is a sign. But, you know, these things pass. The only question is how quickly.
Talking of what the Chinese have accused Liz Truss of, David, in the Times, they're quoting a US admiral saying President Xi could invade Taiwan this year. Well, do they mean this year or 2023? I don't know, but I mean, it's...
Well, I find this quite worrying, because you see the situation that we've got here is that Russia is taking up all our thoughts. Now, I don't say Russia isn't dangerous, particularly when run by Putin, but Russia is a state in serious decline, whereas China is a state in the ascendancy. Xi has just been effectively re-elected for life. He'll soon be Chairman Xi, just like Chairman Mao. And one of the things that he has pledged to do is to take back Taiwan. Now, you know, that's, first of all, Taiwan has the same capability as Ukraine to fight back. But also, how easy would it be, certainly for the Americans, who've already given guarantees to Taiwan, to sit back? And you know, it's a very unstable and worrying world, actually. And you know, one or two people misunderstood what I said the other day. Yeah, but I'm sadly old enough to been the Minister of the Foreign Office responsible for Eastern Europe before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And you know, the old geriatrics who before the final attempt to fix Russia ran the Soviet Union, you know, they were pretty horrifying, but they never did anything much because they were, you know, it was a game for them and everybody knew the rules of the game. Now we don't know the rules of the game. God knows what's going to happen.
And why does China want Taiwan? Because Taiwan produces something like 2/3 of the world's microchips. Exactly. So they get that and they control all our car production, iPhones, laptops.
And it's so unnecessary for China. But it appears with a lot of these people, Putin, President Xi, I mean, these people, it's never enough what they've got, because they think it proves their virility to have more. Yeah, I mean, all this nonsense with Putin started because he believes that the Soviet Empire is sacred. You know, a brief empire over the whole of Eastern Europe that was never sustainable. He now thinks that's where Russia ought to be. I mean, it's awful.
He's also got short man syndrome, I think. Very small.
Well, I don't know if that's a fair point. I don't know.
What was it they used to say on one of those comedy programs? Small but perfectly marked.
Liz, have a look at the Times. This really shocking story about maternity wards in the UK. More than half of them have been judged unsafe.
Yeah, well, this is coincidental with the case of the Chester nurse who's charged and on trial currently for murdering babies in her care. I mean, everybody's shocked about it, but you know,
we have to watch commenting on that while it's sub judice.
Yeah, she's charged. Yeah.
Well, she's been on trial. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, coincidentally, this report's come out. More than half of maternity units are now judged unsafe for the first time since records began. Half of the 139 maternity units run by the NHS are now classed as inadequate or requiring improvement. Across the health service, the CQC, Quality Commission, warned that the risk of patients coming to harm is now seen as the new status quo. Its report adds that the inability of patients to access GP services is exacerbating the high pressures on care services. I mean, it's just frightening. I'd be frightened to be ill, but I'd be so frightened. This would be the best contraceptive to me if I was still fecund. But I remember going to the hospital for the first time when I was pregnant. What are you laughing at? It's a very nice word. Anyway, I was so horrified by the treatment I got at the hands of the NHS antenatal services that I thought, right, well, I've got money in the bank. Rather than go on a fancy holiday, I'm going to spend it on a private hospital because this should be a happy occasion.
And how did that work?
That was absolutely fantastic. And then the next time, I'd moved out to London and I thought, surely the hospitals outside of London will be, you know, more modern. This was Milton Keynes. So I entrusted myself to the NHS. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. Scary. Terrifying. We were neglected. I got an infection. It was just horrendous. And I concluded then, and I'm sure there's some very devoted midwives out there, I'm sure there are, but the management and the organisation, but the attitude is the thing. Now, what I found was, in the private sector, of course, you're paying. You're treated like a customer. You're given a wonderful experience. In the NHS, I found you were treated like, well, it's your fault, it's self-inflicted. You've got yourself in this mess. This is free, take it or leave it. And that was my experience 30 years ago. So I'm not surprised by this report.
I mean, politically, the worry is that the NHS has become like a religion. It can go wrong, and they're all angels, and they're all this, and they're all that. Wonderful work is done in the NHS, and my sister had a great career as ended up as the nursing director of the Christie Hospital in Manchester.
Which is a wonderful hospital.
It is. And, you know, so I'm not against the NHS, not at all. But I do feel worshipping the NHS.
No.
Because the essence of a religion is blind faith. And we can't have blind faith in a service that is as flawed as this one is.
Talking about having faith, David, The Crown.
Oh, yes.
The Crown.
This is a favourite obsession of mine.
They've finally admitted, have they, or are going to sort of properly admit that it is fiction.
Yes, and you know, the interesting thing is about that, I'm just looking at the Daily Mail, it's page 26. Ever heard of Richard III?
Yes.
Indeed.
Not regarded as a great guy, right? A villain, right? There's no evidence he was a villain. However, a gentleman by the name of Shakespeare, we've all heard of him, right?
Yeah.
He decided to write a work of fiction about Richard III, and so for hundreds of years, Richard III has been damned, not because of what he did, but because of what Shakespeare said he did. I think that's relevant to this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, well, I tell you who's done a wonderful job with all this. She's quoted as Dame Judy Dent. She's a wonderful woman, actually. And she accused the show, this is quoting from the Mail, of being cruelly unjust and backed calls for a disclaimer. They want people, although they claim they don't, they want people to believe what is said is true. The problem with The Crown is, of course, that the production standards are so high, it could be. But the reality is, you know, this business about Prince Charles, at a time when his marriage to Diana was imploding, so there was no way he would have done this, goes to John Major and says, you know, Mum's a bit of a nuisance, she's 65, let's get rid of her. I mean, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
But you're sitting in America or wherever, and do you think it's rubbish? There'll be plenty of people maybe sitting in parts of the UK. They believe what they see on the telly.
Yeah.
It's quite worrying, that.
It is worrying. I think it's right. There's something needs to be done. I've always said I find it very worrying when they make dramas about stuff which is ongoing now.
Yes.
How on earth do you believe? Can you do Let Us Rejoice in 15 seconds, Liz? This is the
that.
star.
Oh, I don't really want to give it the oxygen of life, all publicity. Anyway, this lettuce has lasted longer that they pitted it against Liz Truss, allegedly. The lettuce has been put in the fridge every night. Liz Truss wasn't. And also, if you strip lettuce down, you know, and you have it all washed and mixed and in salad, in bags, as salad, then they pump it with carbon monoxide, nitrogen. So, you know, it's got some noxious substance to thrive on. I think Liz Truss has had plenty poison, and that's the end of my metaphor.
Okay.
Can I just say that Larry the cat. I was on to get a cat in.
No, you're over, you're done.
Poor Larry the cat's
But you're
who
finished.
was living with.
You've had your moment.
I mean, honestly, 15 seconds you give her, and what does she take? That is it from you two for this morning. David, Liz, thank you both very much indeed. And I'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we go home together.
Got to give her a lift home for all this. Do you want a lift anywhere, David?
Yeah.
He's really a carpool.
I think I fancy going down to Monte Carlo for the weekend.
Oh, do you?
A lift down.
Well, I would do, but they only serve cheap
Yeah.
Spanish wine, David.
Go join Anne in Malta.
Oh, yeah.